This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
Well, let's talk about something else that probably didn't make any sense to you. Meltzer would write, okay, here goes. The characters of Oz and Merlin the Wizard will be introduced on the pay-per-view. There'll be a stage set up, which is supposed to be Emerald City, and they'll have Dorothy, Tin Man, Scarecrow, Cowardly Lion, and a cast of munchkins. I'm not making this up. Of course, Oz is going to be Kevin Nash, and there's been lots talked about over the years about this, and people have been pretty critical. But I believe, sort of behind the scenes, this coincides with Ted Turner acquiring the rights to The Wizard of Oz, and he's going to sort of remaster it, and it's going to be something that's a part of Turner's library as he starts to expand his Turner Classic Movies initiative. That wound up being a really sound business plan for Ted, but wrestling fans may remember this sort of crossover attempt as a little nonsense.
Yeah. Well, you got a 7-foot athlete, and Kevin Nash who could talk. And then we saddled him with that gimmick. And it was all motivated exactly by what you said. Turner Classic Movies, The Wizard of Oz, it was a show of support to the company that we're supporting your efforts in your movie thing. And we're even going to have a really great character that's going to be able to promote that in a very subliminal way at times. And it was just horrible. Sometimes you see talents who can really work and some that can't work, but it doesn't matter because they're giving gimmicks that have no chance in hell getting over. It's impossible. People are going to roll their eyes upon the entrance. And when the eye rolling starts, you're starting to get it flushed right down the toilet. And that's kind of what we saw there with Oz. Nobody believed in it. It was awkward. And it was created for the wrong reason. I don't have any issues with us trying to promote Turner Classic Movies, but there's got to be other ways to approach that creatively that would not have had, an athlete. You can't replicate size.
Right.
And Nash had size, and he had, for all of his knee surgeries and all those things, he was mobile for a big fella. And the other thing, that I learned was he was a bouncer at one of the strip clubs there in Atlanta. And I used to attend that, believe it or not, and go in and have a beverage. But I would enjoy Kevin in conversation. I said, God damn, this guy's smart. He's really good. And then soon thereafter, I would start my radio show there on WSB, and he was a guest because he was local and had no issues coming into the studio. And so an in-studio guest is much better than a phone guest. And so he would come in and we'd talk about the business and him and so forth and so on, sports. So I said, this son has got a brain. And here's what we put in this costume that's hideous. I didn't get it. Again, trying to serve the masters, even if you're serving them shit. Here's your plate. Oh, by the way, when you take that little cover off, it's a big turd. Chicken fried if you want it. We can grill it for your health nuts. But at the end of the day, it's still fucking shit. End of story.
How involved in this process was Dusty Rhodes? I think there's a pretty famous story out there of Kevin Nash being explained what this is going to be by Dusty. And he points out that Oz isn't a person. Oz is a geographical place. Like it's a place on a map. It's not a human. It's not an individual. It's not an entity. And Dusty's like, well, you're Oz.
Well, I've heard those stories, and I'm sure there's a lot of credence in them. I think Dusty felt like he had done his job of creating a character that could promote another subsidiary of Turner Broadcasting. He had done his job. And I think probably in his mind, he had done all he needed to do as the booker. But it was just a bad idea. There had to be other ways to cross promote from the wrestling to the movie world better, like a clip in the movie, or maybe some two talents taking 60 seconds and reenacting a scene with some little dialogue in it, some fun, not to be taken seriously. You know, we wanted the fans to take Oz seriously, and really, I mean, God damn it! Think about it now; it's not even feasible.
Let
One
me
would
ask
take.
in terms of being funny though, like, you know, I actually asked Mr. Hurd when we did our conversations with Conrad over at adfreeshows.com about the other long-standing rumor that perhaps one of the original plans here was to change Ric Flair's persona up a little bit, throw an earring in, cut his hair, make him
Yeah.
dress up like Spartacus, because
Yeah.
they had just gotten the rights to that movie as well. And Hurd said, there was never any real plan for that. We were just fucking around in a meeting joking like, well, goddamn, what if we made Flair Spartacus? But it was a funny tongue in cheek joke that guys that Flair specifically had ran with as a, can you believe this? You and I have never spoken about that explicitly. Do you recall that being a serious thing or something that guys were just bullshitting about killing time?
I think it was kind of ripping on the square. In other words, if Rick had gone for it to change his hair, haircut, earring, blah blah blah, whatever, then I think the plan would have moved forward. But there's no way in hell he was ever going to sign off on that deal.
No.
And anybody with any common sense or wrestling acumen would not have either. So it was. I think it was one of those deals where he might like it. And of course, he didn't like it. He was offended by it, that you'd want to change the greatest wrestler in the world's appearance. And his robes, his hair, that's all signature Flair stuff.
Right.
He'd worked his ass off for years and years and years to establish his brand. And his brand was what we saw. So apparently you don't like my brand because you want to change it. You know, I don't want to drink New Coke.
Right.
I want to drink Coke Classic or Coke Zero, which is my favorite drink in that world. Conrad, you know that bourbon you brought me?
I do. You're into it now. Crown XR.
Yeah. It's I need an intervention, I think.
Oh, really? It's your new favorite?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's good with anything. Cause I've tried it. It's good in a cup by itself.
Sure.
When I watched the John Wayne movie, I just drank it with no ice because they didn't have ice back in the Duke's days. So I drank a little, about 3 fingers.
Got 3 fingers. That's old school right there.
Yeah, and then the other night I had some with a little Coke Zero, splash thereof. It's really good. I don't know how we got on that topic, but it's but again, it'd be like changing Crown Royal's label. You're no longer going to be in purple and gold. It's going to be something else. Why? Well, we don't have a great reason.
Right.
Just thought we'd do something different.
Let's talk about the danger zone. We've got Paulie interviewing Stan Hansen here. The mic's going to go out twice, but Paulie's going to ad lib pretty well, according to Meltzer. We got the whole Oz segment. Meltzer would say live, the Oz entrance was one of the more embarrassing moments I've had in this lifetime when it came to rationalizing being a wrestling fan. The reaction was a combination of stunned amazement and brutal obscenity-laced vehemence. The smoke was sulfur-based and the building smelled pretty bad for the remainder of the show. The Oz thing wasn't as bad as I thought it would be because it was really just an elaborate ring introduction rather than a several-minute skit. But the people really hated it, maybe even more than they should have. There was a definite kind of reaction from the crowd. There was fairly pro-heel most of the way, but they didn't get into anything that was WWF-like, with WCW trying to copy WWF more and more, as it seemed to turn off the hardcore base, even if the actual action level of the matches is good. He gave it -3 stars. He says -2 for the intro and the match, -1 for the smell. So Al Perez gets the alley copter move. And by the way, Kevin Sullivan, who's in full gimmick here with a monkey on a leash, that's a real thing. He is in the ring the entire 27 seconds. So as Kevin Nash is beating up Tim Parker, his handler doesn't even leave the ring. It's quite the presentation.
Yeah, it's the shits.
Yeah,
that's that's another definition of quite the presentation in this context. It was the shits.
It was,
and it was doomed from the get-go. And sometimes, look, I think in that era, maybe people were willing to wait and see how it's going to work out, but the first impression is usually pretty damned accurate. And it certainly is today, because fans do have more working knowledge. They have because of digital stuff and Twitter and podcasts like this and other things. Well, there's no other podcasts like this. I mean, shit, come on. We got to be honest about it, because we're over, brother. We're over more than Oz. It's just, the crowd will tell you. And that's the sad part about our business sometimes, is the decision makers don't listen to the audience.
Right.
And, you know, back in the day, on that I thought beautifully done A&E Austin documentary, you know, we knew soon thereafter, once he said it, the next time we were on television, there was thousands, seemingly 316 signs. You kind of know you got something. People are not going to make signs and bring them with them and bring them to the building and hold their sign in one hand, their beer in the other, if it didn't get over. And so that's one way you don't even have to listen to the audience. You can see the audience. And I don't know that we had that this wasn't going to happen here with this stuff. Just, you know, it just was horrible. And it wasn't, and the horrible wasn't over yet.
Well,
hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.